One of the reasons I stopped making videos was because due to the amount of information that I was absorbing and how I was perceiving the world, increasingly I had a negative internal dialogue. Now, for those of you that have ever considered your mind, have watched your thoughts, those of you that are versed in meditation would have some sort of idea what I'm talking about, because when you start to meditate especially, you become very conscious of how you as an entity are thinking, and you discover that you think the most preposterous things, the most wildest fantasies you could ever imagine. In your fantasy, you do things that you could never get away with in this reality. And you ask yourself, would I really want to do that? And the vast majority of the time, the answer is no. And it's preposterous as to why you think the way you do. And so what happens is then when you start to look at your thoughts, you see, initially in meditation, you just calm the mind and you just are. And you just observe the thoughts. You see, there's different methods, and obviously if you are doing some sort of mantra meditation, then the mantra is the design to eliminate any thoughts. Because you're saying the mantra internally and over and over and over and over and over, then it stops any thoughts from infiltrating. Because that particular thought of the mantra is a conscious thought, whereas the other thoughts, they appear to be unconscious. They just pop up out of the blue. And you find yourself in situations thinking about the most ridiculous of things, scenarios that happened years and years ago, and you want to make you want to take revenge, or you want to deal with it in a different way, or you want to make atonement for it. And then you think about things in the future, and you look at those thoughts and you go, well, what value are they? There's no value to them whatsoever. Whatever it was that's happened in the past has happened. It's dead and it's buried. Whatever the future holds, then to fantasize about it is of little value. If you can fantasize positive things that keep you going forward in some shape or form, then it may have value. But I would think that a structured way of thinking, planning, would be much more beneficial to you. So when we look at our thoughts and we see the preposterous nature of them, and we can see that we as individuals are acting out scenarios, things that we would never ever do. And you ask yourself the question, well, if it isn't me that would do those things, if it wasn't me that would do those things, then what is it that's actually doing them in the thought form? Are we in the present consciousness constrained by so many social norms that we find our free thought mechanism so preposterous? Because the free thought mechanism is very, very similar to the dreams, and this is why I'm convinced that they derive out of the unconscious, that they derive out of unfettered, unconstrained, uncontrolled being. You see, when you're in a dream, invariably your conscience doesn't step in. Sometimes it does, but invariably you can do things which you wouldn't want to do or couldn't get away with in the waking reality. And so Freud said about dreams that dreams are a wish fulfillment. If you can't get a certain something in this reality, then your dreams will give it to you. Some truth in that. And so when we observe our thoughts and we ask ourselves, who is it? What is it that's actually playing around with scenarios? Well, the conclusion that I've come to hitherto is that it's the unconscious, unfettered, looking at any scenario and just playing. What about this and what about that? Oh, you can do this and you can do that. Fantasy. It's fantasy. But getting back now to how I opened this video, why I stopped making videos, is because most of my internal dialogue always end up in the negative. For instance, if I start thinking about my elder brother, invariably, on every single occasion, doesn't matter how the thought starts out, it ends up negative. It ends up in an argument or in a fight or something of this nature. And so I've been monitoring my internal dialogue over this past several days, in particularly more stringently than I have before. I'm looking at this thing that's going on, and every minute, every 5 minutes, I'm saying negative, 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 on and on and on. Silly negative scenarios. Whatever the scenario is, it just ends up being negative. And so I look at that and I'm thinking, well, what's all that about? Because my personality, my human essence is positive. I look after myself, I train, I educate myself, I self-actualise, I do everything to better myself. And when I'm in the vicinity of people, I do most things to better themselves and to help them. And so it's not like I want to be a spanner in everybody's works and I want to do this and I want to do that. Absolutely not. Just not my nature. And so I think, well, because that's not your nature, then maybe your mind just wants to do something a bit different. And so it creates all the things that you wouldn't do. I'm 55 years old, almost. And I find myself in fights. You see, that was a Freudian slip. I find myself, because there are selves. There's absolutely not just the self. I mean, we've got two hemispheres, two consciousnesses. When the corpus callosum is cut, then you've got two independent brains. At the very least, there's two going on inside here. And when you are multifaceted, when you have done a lot of things and you've got a lot of perspectives, then it seems to me that you produce more varieties of entity. Entities that do this, entities that do that. I mean, for instance, there's an artist entity, there's a fighting entity, there's a loving entity, there's a parental entity, there's a work boss entity, there's many entities. And you could say, oh, they're only facets of the one personality. Well, you can think that, but if you give it closer inspection, then you can see that they are entities unto themselves. And these entities are very, very powerful and prominent in our lives. So let's get back now to the main point of this video. With the internal dialogue, looking at your internal dialogue, and you see, when you start to look at the mind, you have to be tuned in, because we're so used to the mind thinking, and there's been surveys done, and it's said that at least, well, let's say about 70% of people, they are thinking about something else when they're engaged in a particular thing. And so I mean, if you just take sex, for instance, I mean, this is a commonplace one. If you've been with a partner for some time, then invariably you're not thinking about that partner when you're having sex. You're thinking about any other Tom, Dick and Harry, Sheila, Sarah, whatever, aren't you? And so when we're driving, we're not thinking about that. And when we're doing tasks at work, which we've done hundreds, thousands of times, it doesn't necessitate and require our concentration, so therefore our minds can be free. And so we're never here, really. We're never present because we're always thinking about being somewhere else. And this is the whole thing about the Buddhist philosophy about being in the now. And so what I've started to do is, because over so many years I've noticed that when you stop this internal dialogue, this world starts to become very different. And it's a peculiar thing. It seems brighter. It's freer. Of course, I'm projecting onto it, aren't I? If my mind isn't clouded with negative internal dialogues and carrying the weight of the world, and I'm thinking about Trump and I'm thinking about Brussels and the European Union and all the conspiracies, and wow, look at all this stuff that's going on. If you are the variety of person, like I'm assuming you are, that's got your head down the rabbit hole in all this stuff, look at your internal dialogue. Watch it. It's easy to watch it when you wake up in the morning or before you go to sleep. You lie there, you watch. Wow, why am I thinking about that? And you think about something else. And all these things, there's no point. There is no point to it whatsoever. So, if you are versed in meditation, then you will know how to clear the mind. You can clear the mind and you can be in a meditation at any stage of the day. You'll slip in and out of it, that's a natural thing, but you can spend a lot of time with a clear mind. And when you do this, and when you're walking around, and when you're in the shopping mall, when you're in the gym, whatever you're doing, then if you set your thoughts aside, then there's a clarity that comes about. And of course there's a peace with it. And your senses become more heightened. You smell more, you feel more, you sense more, you hear more, you see more. And it's like you become a fly on the wall. Whereas when your mind is full of the matrixial entrapment, viruses, can we say, you're honed into it. In actual fact, you're not present, you're always somewhere else. And you've got no relationship with the here and now. And this is a travesty because the here and now is where you're living. You're not living in the future, you're not living in the past. And so what we do is when we become very, very subject to mind viruses and internal dialogue, we are wishing, fantasizing our lives away. Because we're not present. If you're eating something, if you're eating an apple, an orange, a peach or something like this, concentrate on that. Be in the now with that. Look at it, smell it, feel it, taste it. Enjoy it. Think about how marvellous it is by its very nature and what joy it brings to you and the benefits of it. How it's produced, it's a miracle. Just by being present like that. And then when you're present with people, animals, things. I'm always present with the wind and with the sun and with the rain and with the blowing of the trees and with the gentle sway of the grass. Very present, watching people, how they act, what they say. Present, just looking, just absorbing. And then it's amazing then how much you see and how much you start to learn. Now you see, when people say they want to know truth, Well, there's no greater truth than that. Becoming absolutely present and calm and just using your senses to absorb the information that's going all around you. You'll very quickly gather up a great amount of knowledge about the world and people when you do that. You don't need people to tell you how it is. You've got your own ears and eyes and your heart. You can feel vibrations, you can feel attitudes, and you can feel dispositions. You do it. And then you make up your own mind. And then when you watch television, don't listen to the rhetoric. Listen to the intonation. Listen to the expression. Listen to the emotion. In actual fact, on some occasions, just turn the volume completely down and just watch the animation, because you can learn a great deal from that. You see, most people, if they are intent on listening to the rhetoric, then they won't see the animation, they won't see the body language and all this sort of thing, and there can be a great contradiction there, and you can see lies and truths and all that sort of thing. So what I'm doing is, I've decided that my internal dialogue isn't worth anything unless I set my mind to a particular task, or if I get the inspiration for a video. That's entirely different. It really is entirely different. The inspiration for a video, it just comes on, and it comes on in its fullness. And I turn the camera on and I just do it. And when it's finished, it's over. And it's kind of like it's passed through me and it's gone. And I just wait then for the next one. But the internal dialogue, always telling you stories and fabricating stuff and creating nonsensical fantasies which don't have any benefit, because what they do is they take you away from the life that you're living. And so this is why we can, if we're prudent, consider them as mind viruses of no benefit. And so if you can put them aside and you can be present, you go into the shower and you take your shower and you're present, doing what you're doing. You're feeling the water, you're feeling the soap, you're feeling the freeness, and then you towel yourself down, and then you put some body lotion on, and you do your hair and your teeth, and being present about these things, thinking I'm looking after myself, I'm keeping myself in a high level of standard. Yes, I enjoy doing that and I like the benefits of it. And so feel it, and then when you're preparing some food, look at it, smell it, feel it, taste a little bit of it. Enjoy the actual process rather than just looking for the end product. Well, got to get this done, bang, bish bosh, in a pot, down the neck. Taste it, just be present, that's what I'm saying, people. And it may sound like a very, very simple, rudimentary thing, but how difficult it is to do it. So what I'm doing, the best I can, I'm setting aside all of my internal dialogue, just looking, feeling, observing, without quantifying, without measuring, without placing judgment or looking for determination on anything. Just look at it. I mean, for instance, lying on my bed, as I do every evening time, the sun's going down, and so the sun comes into my bedroom, and because I'm on the 10th floor, invariably there's a little bit of breeze. There's a curtain that just blows. All different sorts of patterns and ways, and I just watch it, all the variations of it. And you may think that that's ridiculous, but that's what's going on. And if you apply that to everything then, the finer details about it, get a level of appreciation, the beautiful cool breeze blowing through this building on this hot day. And I really appreciate that. And I can appreciate the wind even more if I can see its effect. And this is why I love so much to look at the natural world. The trees, the bushes, the plants, the grasses. How they're all being animated by it. It's an expression of the wind. You can't see the wind, but you can see the expression. You see, isn't that wonderful? Something that you can't see. You can feel it. But if you want to have a relationship with it visually, then you need a third party. Something which is going to be animated by it. And so when you start to look at the world like that, and when you watch the trees, every single tree moves in its own way. Every leaf on the tree, every single time you look at it, doesn't matter what time of day, it's different. Every single time the wind's coming from a different direction, it's of a different velocity, and the light's different, and so you got a whole visual display of something which is mesmerising when you look at the genius of it. And you look around the world and you just go, wow. Particularly in springtime, when you go out into nature and you can see the produce of this world via the reproduction, the rejuvenation, the new growth everywhere. Everything comes alive, and all the young creatures, you see them, the young ones all over the place, the birds and whatever, squirrels, rabbits, and all the different varieties of insects and everything. When you have a calm constitution, you can look at those and you can become one with them, because when you observe them, when you feel them, that is you, isn't it? It's deriving from in here and in here. They're an expression. What are they? They're something which is giving rise to you expressing yourself. They're expressing themselves, and they're allowing you to express yourselves, and so you're sharing a mutual expression. And what is this expression? It's a life force. So together you share in the life force. And when you think about it like that, it feels so much more rich. Rather than, oh, that's a bee, or that's a dragonfly. Hang on. Let me observe you, bee. Let me listen to you. Let me get close to you. Maybe I can touch you. And then you have a relationship. You have an intimacy. You see? And then your information, your mind is absorbing information at a much greater rate when you're concentrating. And so then you have this mutual experience. And so, what am I saying here in this video? It's very Buddhist. It's very here and now. It's very appreciating the world. It's very taking the time to look at the world in a relaxed state, open about it all. So the end result then is when you can get rid of the internal dialogue, you enter into a new world where the colours are brighter, where the animation is more majestic, where everything that is going on within it, you start to see a rhyme and a reason and a meaning and a connection. Connections, 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 connections. Connections to so many things. And when you look at nature in its genius, you can see how man has replicated nature in its genius. The genius is just a different form, you see, with our buildings, with the technology and all this sort of thing. How much of it is so based and stolen from nature? Not really stolen though, because nature is what we are. We are nature, and so nature is working through us, you see. So, to conclude on this video then, to get into a calm state, when you recognise how superfluous your internal dialogue is, when you stop that, then you move into a different world. So much calmer, so much more blissful. Your mind is in a position to really gain knowledge, because you are not projecting anything onto it. You're open and you're looking and you're feeling, and you'll see many, many things that you've never seen before. Because before, your mind was too busy projecting onto everything. It's the big I am. I know this and I know that and I know a load of things. I know how this world works. Lose all that. Just come down to ground zero. Open your eyes like a child and go, wow. What a wonderful world.